Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Reyes Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined this today by Matt Moreno, Scott Geirmin. We've got some breaking news on a Friday, not completely out of nowhere news, but 4 new rule changes approved for 2023. There was a collective bargaining agreement that allowed for an 11-person committee, 6 owner representatives, 4 player representatives, and 1 umpire representative to vote on some of these changes. There were 4 rules up. It was a pitch clock, a shift ban, a limit to pickoff attempts, and an increased base size rule. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, and we will, Matt, I want to start with you first. Traditionalists, I'm not saying you're one of them, they're going to balk at any rule changes whatsoever. But I sense that big picture, we might look back at this as a good thing for baseball. So before we dive in, as I said, zooming out, big picture, the idea of changing the game of baseball, how do you feel about it?
Well, I'll out myself as a traditionalist. I'm sure people who have seen some of our videos won't be surprised by that. That being said, I think some of these changes we saw coming. We'll get into, I'll save my deeper thoughts for later in the video. I am a little worried about some of the changes. I think like the base size is one of the more mundane ones. I don't see too much of an issue there, but the others, I think there's reason, maybe not necessarily to be concerned, but I think an argument can be made that it is going to change kind of how the game is played, at least initially.
Okay, well, this is going to be a good conversation. Scott, you hopped on this video looking like you had just come from a funeral as we looked at this. So are you in the traditionalist camp and worried about change to the game of baseball?
I like how you said that, by the way. I'm a traditionalist in some aspects. I do like, a faster game. It's not like a make or break for me. I wasn't all on that, but there are some parts that, just like Matt said, will completely change the game that nobody's even thought about yet. And more so, I don't know if you want me to get into it, but more so, I'm the pickoff attempts. That one is massive. Like the data there is striking about how much it increases stolen bases at the minor league level. In the major leagues with pop time, guys are, higher competition. That's going to matter a ton.
Okay, well, let's get into these. Let's start with the shift ban because some are more or less related. But the shift ban is, I think, the most straightforward of the bunch. You have 4 infielders, in case you're new to the sport of baseball. You are now only allowed to have 2 on either side of second base, and all 4 of them have to have their feet in the dirt. So the days of Max Muncy facing a 4-man outfield with the guys standing halfway towards the right fielder, no longer. The guys 3 on one side, the Max Muncy bunt hit the other day, probably going away. So, Scott, I'll start with you on this one. Do you like the banning of the shift?
No, I don't. I just don't like it. It's not easy to bunt. That thing never, that idea that you could just bunt through the shift or get an easy base hit there. It's hard to do that. But I also think that why should you limit where players can play? It's changing the game. Do I like it? No. Is it going to change the game? Absolutely. Will it extend the life of a lot of players around MLB? 100%. So I understand both sides, that there's more scoring to it. I don't like it. That's just not my favorite thing. That one's going to hurt a lot.
Yeah, this one's interesting to me because basically what baseball teams have done is they have gotten smarter. They followed the analytics and they can say Max Muncy pulls the ball, whatever the number is, 85% of the time. And therefore, if we can put 3 guys in front of where he normally hits the ball, that is good math. And the expectation was, hey, batter, Max Muncy, it's on you to adjust. Like, if they're going to put 3 guys there, then go have a couple meetings with Freddie Freeman, learn to hit the ball the other way, and move along. That never happened. The Joey Gallos of the world, those guys have just never adjusted. It has continued to be pull, no matter how many guys are in the infield. And now it feels like they're getting bailed out. Now, for me, if I was left with 2 choices, continue to try and shove a square peg in a round hole and tell the Joey Gallos of the world, you have to learn to hit it the other way, otherwise you're going to hit 160. That's just not going to happen. They have shown us it's not going to happen. So I think Major League Baseball was left with only one choice, which is if they're not going to change and the product is going to suffer, then we need to do something about it. Do you think that's the right thing to do, or should we have continued to say to the guys now hitting 160, tough luck, this is going to be your batting average for as long as you continue to refuse to change?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm fine. I can understand MLB being concerned about the overall product and how the game is going to be received with, current fans and future fans and all that. So that's understandable. I think, like we talked about before, when, some of this stuff was sort of coming up, my sort of hesitation is basically telling teams like how they have to play their defense. Like,
Yeah.
that I don't know how fair that is. And, to Scott's point about bunting, when Max Muncy did it the other day, Clayton Kershaw himself said, everybody thinks that bunting is so easy, but it's not. And he was giving Muncy a ton of credit for A, recognizing that situation, and B, being able to pull it off. And another thing with this too that I found interesting, Evan Drellich, when he was kind of responding to a bunch of tweets before the vote was made official, the infield dirt isn't a regulated size. Like, there's a range that it sort of needs to be constructed within. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, because if you're MLB, you're telling teams like, hey, your infield needs to be set this way, in terms of infielders, needs to be set this way. But the size of the dirt sort of varies. And it wasn't significant. It was like 1 to 2 feet. It needs to be within, I think it was like 94 to 96 feet or something like that. So it wasn't huge, but I just feel like if you're MLB telling them, hey, there's a standard defense now for your infielders, like, I think we need to then sort of address the dirt size, because that could become an advantage or disadvantage potentially.
Yeah, let me pause the conversation, because you said something, Matt, that I think is really interesting. I'll come back to you on this one. The quality of the game and the need to improve it. I think this is where baseball fans really get into some pretty heated arguments, because you have people that love baseball and say, I love baseball. This is baseball. Why are we changing this thing that I love? And you have another group of people, which, if I'm being honest, I think I find myself more in this second group of people, which is, I do love baseball, but I want more people to love baseball. I want the sport to grow. I want my friends that think baseball is boring and it's too long and there's not enough action and there's too many strikeouts. I want them to have a game of baseball that they can get more and more interested in. Now, I'm not saying one of those groups is right and the other group is wrong, but I think that's what's under the undercurrent of all of this is Major League Baseball is saying we want to grow the pie. And if we want to grow the pie, we can't keep handing people the exact same 3-hour, 10-minute product with tons of strikeouts, tons of home runs, and tons of walks. Like, we need to incentivize players to put the ball in play, have more hits, have more steals. So, Matt, I'll come back to you. Do you agree with baseball's general philosophy of we need to make the game better?
Yes, but I think, like I've said before, I'm not sure if this is the best approach. I don't know if, banning defensive shifts so that there's more singles, or maybe a ball gets through and goes to the gap for a double, is going to be more impactful on the casual fan than, say, streaming issues or just blackouts, local blackouts that are still in place. Like, to me, I think baseball is a little misguided in how they're kind of trying to approach, sort of fixing the sport, if you will.
Scott, what about you? Do you think the game needs to be improved, or should we just say, hey, it's a regional game, the people that love it, attendance is fine, everybody's making plenty of money, don't mess with it?
I have a young fan's like long-winded rant about baseball. Like, in baseball, okay, people who love baseball are going to watch baseball.
Yeah,
that's just how it is.
And none of this is going to change those people. Like, those people aren't turning off their TVs because now there only have to be 2 guys, something that has only come about in the last 5 or 6 years.
No one is going to be looking at the TV, just, casual fan, and saying, why is there a defender in the outfield, which we know is Max Muncy, who's just playing second base. Why is he there to field that ball? I don't think that by increasing offense, this isn't football. This football, more offense, more thing. People want that, high scoring games there. Traditional baseball fans, you either can like offense. I love pitching. I don't mind a 1-0 ball game in the middle of June. I'll watch that full 9 innings. Traditional fans, they see every single pitch. That's it. Faster game won't matter.
But do you understand that a 1-0 game to you might be interesting because you are the diehard baseball fan that is going to watch the Dodgers no matter what, but your friend is completely bored out of their mind at the idea of watching a 3-hour and 10-minute 1-0 baseball game. Like, I think that's the crux of the issue. We have to accept, I think, that it's not about me and you and the 3 of us sitting here who do this for a living, talking about baseball and writing about baseball. This is about our friends who are casuals who baseball is going after.
I think that there's more of a problem of marketing the players that people can relate to. I think that, before Fernando Tatis was suspended, like, he's probably still should be one of the most prolific, fan-friendly players out there. Mookie Betts of the world. Those guys should be put up and able to, like, use their platform. That's what MLB has never done. And they just have an issue with that. And that's the disconnect between the players and the owner side of it. That's where I feel it lies. And I understand they want to change the game, speed it up, whatever. I just think they're doing it the wrong way, and that's not going to bring more fans to the game.
Yeah, as long as there's no in-player interviews, right? In-game interviews, right, Matt? We can't do that. No, I'm with you guys. I think you're right. The blackouts, the streaming, that's true. The marketing of players, that's true. I do think if you improve all of that, there's still the game on the field that I don't think is the most appealing thing when it's put up next to a football game, for example. And so I'm okay with the idea. I do think these are sort of mostly fringe type of things. Like, we haven't limited it from 9 innings to 7 innings. That we haven't changed 3 outs to 4 outs, that kind of thing. So I think the bones are there. But let's get to the second one, and it's the pitch clock, because I think this is probably the most dramatic one. And here's kind of what it is. The way that the pitch clock works is it's 15 seconds if the bases are empty, and it is 20 seconds if there are runners on base. This has been tried out in the minor leagues. It has shaved about 25 to 30 minutes off of game times down to 2.5 hours. So you can imagine if the Dodgers start at 7:10 on a Tuesday night, that game is done at 9:40 and not 10:15. Like, I'm here for that, right? The way that it works, there's rules for the catcher, the hitter, and the pitcher. The catcher has to be in position when there's 10 seconds on the clock left. The hitter has to be ready at 8 seconds, and the pitcher must be in their motion before it expires. If the catcher or the pitcher fails to do that, it's an automatic ball. If the hitter fails to be ready, it's an automatic strike. Scott, what do you think about the pitch clock? We've seen, again, this has been tested in the minor leagues to reduce 30 minutes off of the time of it. This is not something that baseball had a problem with 30 years ago. It is a new thing that, hey, we'll just take our time. I love this. I love this. I love this. Make the games 2.5 hours. Condense all of the same action into 2.5 hours. We're not losing any action, in my estimation.
No, sure. Yeah. I actually was at a minor league game over the summer, and so we're still in the summer, but I actually enjoyed it. I didn't notice it at all. Yeah. And I've read a bunch that players who have gone on rehab assignments, it was implemented and they didn't even notice it. So it's fine for me. I'm excited to see how, stadiums do with some media and the shot clock, basically. I'd like to see that. I'm still worried about, runners on base. I'm still worried about how the pickoff thing's going to be. But
we'll get to the pickoff in a second. Matt, Jeff Passan said this is the best, most fan friendly thing baseball has done since selling beer at baseball games. You agree?
Yeah, I guess I could see that if it's going to shave off that much time. I'm still a little skeptical of, I think it's easier to enforce something like this with minor league players, compared to, some perennial all-star. Like, can you imagine, an umpire telling Max Scherzer, hey, you threw that pitch late? Like,
it's going to be awesome. I can't freaking wait. You want to talk about marketing and you want to talk about dominating the news cycle? That clip's going to go viral. It's going to be epic.
Fair. But, in terms of my biggest question is how much is this going to be enforced? Because they did already sort of do the one-timer in between innings and all that. And it's gotten a little bit better. But I can't remember what season it was, but batters already were supposed to be keeping 1 foot in the box in between pitches. And that is kind of enforced, but not enforced. And so that's what I'm going to be curious to see with this. And I am also a little concerned, and it relates to the pickoff attempts that we'll get into, having the base runner and all players sort of knowing that there's a set timer now on the pitcher either has to throw over pickoff or throw to the plate, I think impacts how the game is played. And that is my concern.
Yeah, I will say one thing on rule changes. I'm a little encouraged because I know the NBA has gone through some rule changes about defense and stuff, and they were actually really good, at least early on, at enforcing those things and changing the ways guys can be defended. I think they got a little bit more lax as the year went on, but those are way more subjective. This is like, there's a clock, and it's either at 0 or it's not at 0, and so I'm optimistic that if baseball is going to go through the process of testing it in the minor leagues, putting it up for vote, and then saying we're going to do this, I'm hopeful that they're going to do it. They have been checking guys for sticky stuff, whether or not they're actually doing anything. They're at least making it appear as if they're doing things. So let's move on to the other two, and one is related. It's the pickoff attempts. Scott, you hate this one the most. The way that this one works is you can only attempt a pickoff twice in an at-bat. If you try a third time and are unsuccessful, then it's a balk. So basically, the guy automatically gets the next base if you try a third time and are unsuccessful. If the runner does steal second base, for example, everything resets. You don't like this one. Tell me why you don't like this.
It's just, it's basically feels like manufactured movement, if that's what the intent is.
Which I think that is the intent. I mean, they would openly, I don't think they're hiding behind anything. They are saying, we want the game to move quicker and we want more stolen base attempts.
But how much do people like the phantom runner in extra innings? I hate it.
Yeah, you're talking to the wrong. I'm the weirdo on that one too. So
Yeah, I hate that also.
Like there's nothing worse than, oh my gosh, there's nothing worse than giving up, like losing a game on like an unearned run. Like I just but I'd like to go, to what Matt said about, the clock. Just one real last thing. How much is that going to be enforced?
yeah.
That's it. Like it's one of those things. But yeah, I know Matt will expand on this a bunch, but the pickoff attempts, it just, I don't like the manufactured movement. I'm okay. Like, imagine if we had this in 2016 when Trey Turner was on base.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the one thing I will say is this has to be paired with the pitch clock, because if you have a pitch clock and no limit on pickoff attempts, if you want to rest, you just throw quietly, softly over to first base, however many times you want, get yourself a breather, and then go back at it. So I do think it's mandatory. Look, most of these guys aren't throwing over more than 2 or 3 times in an at-bat anyway, so I think this is less of an impact than maybe we're making it out to be. And while the third one, there is a huge risk, there is still the possibility that you could throw over. It's not like, hey, once you throw over twice, sorry, you're not allowed to throw over anymore. So I guess I think the impact of this is maybe being overstated, Matt. But I mean, obviously, you and I are disagreeing on this one. So tell me why you think this is going to have as big of an impact as you do.
I just think well, first, I do agree with you from the sense that if you're doing a pitch clock, then yeah, like there was going to be a limit on pickoff attempts. Like I think those were very much tied together. My concern is if you have a base runner now on first base who's, a threat to steal, I don't think any pitcher realistically is going to make that third attempt at a pickoff throw. Yeah. So now if you're the base runner, if a pitcher has thrown over twice, pretty much, I mean, you could be 99% sure he's probably going to the plate, and then you can try to start timing that up to then steal second base. And I just think it just impacts the fundamental aspect of the game and kind of tilts it. It gives it a little bit of imbalance is my worry. I just lost my train of thought. I was also going to go somewhere else.
Well, here's what I would say to that real quick. I wonder how many guys are actually going to throw over a second time, because if it a second time is when you start to do it, you can always threaten the second time, and we're at the same place we are right now in baseball. And as long as you never make that second time, then you don't have the risk of the third. But here's the other thing I would say. If Trey Turner's standing on first base and you have thrown over twice already, and you're terrified that he's going to steal, if you think about the two options, the third pickoff, how different is a balk than Trey Turner running when he thinks there's no chance that you're going to pick him off? Like, one is a 95% success rate, which is him actually having to steal, and the other is 100% success rate, which is a balk. So I guess, I don't know. Well, this one we'll have to see implemented before we see the impact on it. But I'm skeptical that this will be that big of a deal. I'll leave it there. The last one here, the base sizes, guys. This is a huge deal. There are now 6 inches less between first base and second base, which I think is a game. No, I'm just kidding. Who cares? Like, it's going to limit collisions. It's going to give guys more space to steal bases. This is clearly a thing. Nat, do you have any strong opinions about bases that are 18 square inches instead of 15 square inches?
Not too much. I mean, I think more than anything, I'm curious to see what they're going to look like out in the diamond. Like, are they going to be now, these huge white pillows that just look kind of funny? There was the side-by-side picture, I think, a few months ago, and it was noticeably bigger, but I'm more curious to see just what they look like, kind of looking down at an infield now.
I think we'll just forget what bases look like over the offseason, and then they'll be there and they'll be like, oh, that's what second base looks like. That's right. Scott, any strong opinions on that one?
No, I mean, it works for me. It's fine. I definitely think it will matter. You'll see like bang bang plays will be different. I mean, I don't mind it. It's fine by me. I've played softball before. It's not like that, but I mean, on the big league level, it certainly will make a difference.
Anybody who has an issue with the base sizes, to me, you're just outing yourself as I'm against any rule change. I'm not going to think critically about any of these. I'm just no on all of them. I don't know how you could care about an extra 3 square inches. So, okay, here's the last piece on this that I think was really, really interesting and intriguing about the whole process, which was the players voted unanimously against banning the shift and the pitch clock. As I said at the beginning, 11-person committee. This was all collectively bargained, so the players knew what they were getting themselves into. They were allowed 4 representatives on this committee of 11, but all 4 of them voted against the shift and voted against the pitch clock, and they were overruled by the ownership representatives as well as the umpire representative. So, in one sense, this has always been the case. Baseball has unilaterally been able to implement rule changes whenever and however they would like to, essentially. So, on one hand, the players, 4 of them got to have their voice heard. Maybe there was some compromise in some of the rules that we're talking about here. On the flip side, it was clearly a facade of influence if you thought you were actually going to change the mind because the owners just voted against. Is this a big deal to you, Matt?
It is from the standpoint of it's just another reminder of how much of a difference there is between the union and the owners, and like they just remain at odds. And even Rob Manfred's statement with MLB's press release was kind of funny to me. I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it, but sort of knowing how the vote went, the end of his statement was, "We appreciate the participation of the representatives of the major league players and umpires in this process." Now, knowing the players voted, strongly, like you said, unanimously against 2 of the new rules to, kind of thank them for their participation. Like, again, I'm sure he didn't mean it, but it just sort of reads like, hey, thanks for coming. This is what we're doing anyway.
Yeah, participation's an amazing word. Scott, is this a big deal to you, or is this just sort of, hey, we all knew this is exactly what would happen and no surprises?
It just shows where, exactly where they stand, what sides, more offense, league wants that, more different, change the game. Manfred's done that since he's, been in place. But I mean, wow, I just read that last line. That just a little backhanded slap there.
Yeah. It is interesting because there have been a number of players who have come out in favor of, like, the pitch clock, for example, guys who have been at the minor leagues or guys who have seen minor league baseball, and they actually think it's great. So I don't think this is necessarily representative. Is it possible that the players were just banding together and trying to be difficult to prove that, like, once again, we're getting pushed around? Sure. I don't know. I think the players, look, they're welcome to vote however they wanted. As I said, having 4 seats at an 11-person table, is that better than having no seats at a 1-person table? Like, slightly, maybe. I think participation is the key word. They participated in the process. They did not influence the process. And so that's where we stand. Let us know what again, I'm sure we're doing a live watch along tonight, Friday night, for the Padres game. Matt, I'm sure you and I will have lots of discussions about this during instances in the game and say how this would impact this, that kind of thing. I'm sure we'll be able to interact with fans. So make sure to join that. You can follow Dodger Blue 1958 on social media. We'll send the link out. That's a 6:40 game. If you missed the Dodger Daily preview of that game, check that out on our YouTube channel here as well. That's Matt Moreno. That's Scott Geirmin. My name is Jeff Spiegel. As always, we appreciate you guys joining us. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.